Welcome to episode 24 of Believe in TCU. As part of the Believe Network, I'm Zion Trammell, joined alongside Ian Napetian and Seth Dowdle. It's a basketball-centered episode today as we'll discuss both men's and women's basketball for TCU. But first, quickly, guys, how are y'all doing today on this nice Tuesday morning as we're recording?
Yeah, pretty good. Just got off of the fall semester, so officially on break. But no, pretty good. Weather's pretty decent here in Texas. Just excited for women's basketball. They're playing Sanford today, so trying to get out to 11-1 on the season. But no, pretty good so far.
It's too warm. It's my take. It's too warm outside.
It's nice outside,
December.
Seth.
I know it's nice, but like Christmas is in like 7 days, and it's
75 degrees.
It's 75 degrees outside. I should know this should be normal to me because I've lived here my entire life. But excuse me for wanting to have a little bit of some chilly weather. For my wonderful Christmas. I've already resigned myself to the fact that there will not be snow, but
no,
there will be crappy rain. It's rained a lot. The last couple of days. It's been terrible, but it's too warm. Other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, it is odd weather here, but you always got to expect that in Texas. So today we're going to discuss women's and men's basketball today. We're going to start things off with the women's team. Did not move at all in the AP top 25. They stayed at number 12. They played just one game this last week. They beat Louisiana Tech 92-41 in an absolute dominant performance from the Horned Frogs. Nice bounce back from that crushing loss to South Carolina. They held the Lady Texters, the Louisiana Tech Lady Texters.
We need to talk about that at some point.
Yes. Well, let's talk about it right now real quick. I have a huge problem with that. Why aren't they just the Lady Bulldogs? The Lady Texters?
Or just Bulldogs. I mean, there's not even a ton of teams now or universities that still do the Lady whatevers, right? I mean, it's really interesting. When you say it, it sounds like, nobody knows what a tech is, let alone a texter. I think in this day and age, people are like, that's an interesting mascot. Right. Because when I was saying it in my head, I'm like, it sounds like they're texting. But no, it's really strange. I was at the broadcast doing the broadcast, and saying the Lady Texters several times was very, very strange. And it is quite a mouthful.
Listen, guys, it's the Louisiana Institute of Technology. That's what it is, right? So they're the Lady Technologies, pretty much. That's pretty much what this translates to.
Yeah.
I mean, which is great. It's fine. I don't care. But you have a perfectly awesome mascot that everyone else seems to use on the campus.
Yep.
Maybe we're uneducated about this, but it doesn't sound very, very
doesn't sound natural.
It doesn't sound natural.
It doesn't at all. And the way they played was it didn't live up to the name. Let's just say that. They scored just 5 points in the first quarter. Ian, like you mentioned, you were on the broadcast for this game, so I guess we'll start with you. What were kind of your takeaways? How good was it that TCU was able to bounce back in this way following that loss to South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, for TCU, I think the hardest thing after that loss to South Carolina was just ultimately the fact that your next game is a whole week away, right? I think especially for these athletes and student athletes, right? The last thing you want after getting blown out to the number 3 team in the country is to not have a game in a few days, right? So you kind of have to sit and wait, and there's that period of when you dwell over a loss like that, right? I mean, obviously, TCU didn't show up against South Carolina. If TCU gets another chance against a top team like that or against the Gamecocks, I'm sure it'll be a very different game. But I think that was the biggest thing for TCU, is just being able to bounce back, right? So much went wrong against South Carolina. I mean, you can look at Sedona Prince being taken out of the equation completely, not being able to really control the paint. When she wasn't able to be in the paint, South Carolina really also shut down Madison Connor from beyond the arc, right? So when you don't have at least those two players being able to really find their game and find their groove. You put so much pressure on Haley Van Lith and the rest of the team to make their shots. And but with that said, against South Carolina, TCU basically found all that success again against Louisiana Tech. They got really great plays in the paint. Madison Connor was heating up from beyond the arc as well. The ball movement was a whole lot better too. And so it's one of those games where it's a get right game, right? This is a game against a team like Louisiana Tech that you're expected to win big time. Obviously playing against a team like LA Tech, you can also have some more depth and show that off a little bit too, give some of your players some rest. So no, I think this was huge for TCU. It was kind of a bounce back. It really just kind of reinvigorated the confidence in the team. And I think going forward, especially today against Samford and then getting into Big 12 play, they can kind of take this and really run with it.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing a lot of that. It's one of those games where you said it, Ian. It's just one of those games where you go into it and you're like, all right, we're gonna win. We think we better win at least. Let's try and shore up some things and try and work on some stuff. And that showed because I mean Madison Connor didn't even start. They threw in a completely different starting five. Obviously there was some familiar faces, but Agnes Siminopu and goodness gracious, Jovanovic got the starts and gosh, I cannot talk today. And he was essentially like, yeah, this is just basically a game where we're kind of working on some stuff, especially after a week of thinking about that terrible loss. And even then, you still got a lot of production from Madison Connor. I mean, she scored 18 points and reached the 1,000-point mark for her career. So, heck of a weekend for her, by the way. She graduated too, and then was like, I'll score 18 and get my 1,000th career point the next day, and I don't have to do school anymore. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a pretty good deal. Yeah, this is what we come to expect though from Mark Campbell TCU squad in non-conference. I mean, that South Carolina loss was his first non-con loss as the head coach of TCU.
Yeah.
And hey, no shame in your first non-conference loss at TCU being in South Carolina. And then the next week you get a whole week off, and then you come out and you just do that where you win by 40 points or 50 points. Hey, props to them. And as we go into Big 12 play, which I know it's not the next game, but it's the next game after that, you got to feel really, really good about how this team's playing.
Yeah, and kind of to that point too, I just want to add on is that, again, right, you look at the schedule, and I mean, sometimes maybe fans and us fans don't think about it as much, but you're now hitting a point in the season where it's winter break. And so for these student athletes, for the first time really this season, they get to just focus on basketball, right? And I think coming off of a loss, excuse me, sorry guys, dealing with a bit of a throat thing. Coming off of a loss to South Carolina, getting a rebound game like this against Louisiana Tech, it gives you that confidence to go into this month stretch to really just focus on getting ready for Big 12 play, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a slog in certain moments. Again, this team has good depth, but maybe not the depth that you're looking for to compete with those top of the line teams. But again, this is a good break for some of these players to just focus on basketball. It's a good opportunity for the team to just focus on basketball, right? As opposed to dealing with schoolwork, dealing with other things like that. I think it's going to be very freeing for a lot of these players. And it really is just exactly what TCU needs as a bit of a refresher going into Big 12 conference play.
Ian's got a game to call tonight. We got to put him in like a hibernation chamber so he can rest up before he has to start talking for a very, very long time.
Yeah. My throat's been raspy all of today and yesterday, so I need to bring I've got a little I've got honey packets that I'll bring to the game today.
Yeah, I've heard that helps a lot. Just bringing those, and it helps with your voice.
Yeah, during a timeout, just rip one.
Yeah, or like. Well, so Ian, you're doing color commentary, so your analysis was like, good shot.
Yeah, I'd be like, that was really nice.
Ooh, good
Yeah.
That's
pass.
one way to get your voice in a lot more because it's tough during basketball. The shots made, and then you just go, "That was cool."
Yep.
Mm.
What a shot. No, it's funny. I mean, just kind of going off tangent real quick, like, doing color for basketball on radio is definitely tough. You have such little time to get in after a bucket and jump in and basically be as in-depth as possible, as succinct as possible, and as quick and in as and in as less time or little time as possible, right? And so it's like you got to be so straightforward and clear with what you're trying to say. And sometimes in certain games where TC is beating a team by 40, 50 points, at a certain point, you sometimes feel like your analysis doesn't really matter because someone can hit a game high or their season or career high, and you're like, oh, do I even say that because it's a 50-point game?
That's
But
why the adage just say that was a good shot. It works in every circumstance.
Yep.
You just kind of throw that in there because we don't know it's a good shot. It could have been a terrible
Yeah.
shot. It just went in.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can add in like if it was a really bad shot but it went in, you would have been like, wow, kind of surprised that went in. Not gonna lie, her form was terrible.
Not gonna lie. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot different than baseball or really any other sport because it's such a fast-paced game. Um, but maybe you'll have maybe TCU will be up by so much tonight against Samford that you won't need as much analysis. That, like you said, you can just be like, do I need to say anything here?
I know. I'll just be
Yeah.
like, bang, bang. What a shot.
Wow! Oh my goodness! What a play! Yeah, but great win for this women's team. They did go with a little bit of a different lineup, as you said. You guys said earlier, inserting Agnes Eminopu into the starting lineup. She had a really good game: 7 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals. That's called filling up the stat sheet, and I really like what she brings to this team. A lot of good defense, some physicality, and just kind of a bit of versatility, things that you can do that can get you minutes on the floor. She's just an all around terrific player. Really liked what I saw from her. And yeah, this team just does such a good job of taking care of business, right? I mean, there's some teams that will play down to their competition, but that's clearly not been the case with Mark Campbell, as they've lost just one game in non-conference play in 2 seasons. So that's something that you got to appreciate. Sometimes you can take for granted, um, dominant performances like that, but to be able to rebound from a tough loss to South Carolina and just take it all out on Louisiana Tech, winning by 50. It speaks a lot to what this program is about, and they're serious about it for sure.
Yeah, I was just before the game, I was talking with Chris Blake, who does the play-by-play for radio, and I was kind of telling him, I'm like, look, today is probably one of the worst days to be a Louisiana Tech Lady Texter because you're going to be coming against a team that just got the brakes, beat off them, right? I mean, TCU is going to come out here trying to make a statement, really trying to respond, and that's what they did, right? And I mean, to your point, Zion, this team wins the games that they're supposed to win in a very confident and decisive manner. And just like we've mentioned, I mean, changing the lineup right after a loss to South Carolina, I mean, I wouldn't call it a bold statement because you're playing against a team like Louisiana Tech, but it also tells you the confidence that Mark Campbell has in his bench players, right? Aminopu, Jovanovic, those are last year. I mean, they accounted for 2 of the 3 players that played in each of the 33 games last season, right? So you've got so much experience on this bench. And I think, when you look back to last season when TCU had that huge injury bug, right? You say, hopefully this will come in handy this year now, when TCU needs to give some players a break or when TCU needs to call upon players from their bench. And I think the game against Louisiana Tech was the proof that was the proof that you needed to see that TCU does have that experience from last year. And it really helps to give Madison Connor and Donovan Hunter a little bit of a break. Donovan Hunter is struggling a little bit offensively, right? I mean, she She takes pride in her defensive work too, but offensively, it's definitely been a bit of a slow start. Then for Madison Connor, who only had 5 points against South Carolina, right? Being able to take a break a little bit, maybe not start, but come in once the game's flowing and then find your groove. It's got to give Mark Campbell and this coaching staff so much confidence and just knowing that they can go to several different players to try to get the ball rolling in different aspects of the game.
All very good points. TCU again will take on Samford, the Samford Bulldogs tonight. They actually go by the Bulldogs. This women's team that'll be tonight or Tuesday at 6:30, and then they'll open up Big 12 play taking on UCF this Saturday at 1:00. It should be a fun road in conference play for TCU. As of this week, they are the top-ranked Big 12 team. Is this TCU team capable of winning the Big 12? I think so, guys. Just quickly. Yep.
Yes, definitely.
I think they can definitely do that. And very, very excited to see what else this team has in store. Again, they'll open up against UCF, who they beat last year with a volleyball player and a couple walk-ons. So feeling pretty confident that they can win this one this year.
Poor UCF. Man. Just got caught
under the bus. Under the bus.
Well, that game was very memorable because I wrote a recap about that game, and then Mark Campbell went on to ESPN after that game, and it was very funny. UCF kind of gave TCU a bit of a story there. But we'll switch to the men's side of things, where things are, well, putting it
things are great,
lightly, just not as good. No, not great, Seth.
I was thinking of a different team. My bad.
Things are going.
It's going. It's going. They won yesterday. They beat South Alabama 58-49.
USA, as they are abbreviated.
Yeah. Definitely not the strongest offensive performance. They did lose Frankie Collins for the season, which is a massive blow. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And they kind of went with the new lineup yesterday. They went with Vashon Alette, Trezarian White, Noah Reynolds, David Punch, and Ernest Uday. And that front court of Punch and Uday together seems to be working a little bit for TCU. It's definitely produced some quality minutes, and it's due to the fact that they don't really have a lot of size on this team. And so you kind of have to pair the two together if you're going to have success on the glass. I guess what do you guys gosh, I'm not really sure what to say about this men's team because they're kind of in a tough spot, but is there any positive takeaways from a win against South Alabama? Where do you guys kind of feel about this team right now?
The positive takeaway is that they won the game.
Without Frankie Collins, too.
Without Frankie Collins, yes, that is a positive. Now, it was a little testy. It was not here. You know what's funny? So I have this app. It's called Reel, and it's just a sports app. And I get notifications for everything, and I get in these TCU men's basketball notifications every 5 minutes or so of game time. And it would say the score, and it'd say TCU, and South Alabama was abbreviated to USA. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at TCU beating the men's national team, going out there, playing well. And then I remember that this is not Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant, but is instead the South Alabama Jaguars, which makes it a little less of an accomplishment. But I just thought that was kind of funny. The thing about playing without Frankie Collins is that TCU still has a lot of issues. They had a lot of issues with Frankie Collins. It's just that those issues are going to be very you can't overcome them as easily as you might have with a better player like Frankie Collins. This team still cannot score cannot operate a half court offense. This team can still not shoot free throws. This team can still not shoot 3-pointers. It's the same with or without him, and so therefore it's kind of hard to say that this is a massive blow. It is a massive blow, but it really doesn't change my outlook on the TCU basketball season because my expectations were not that high to begin with.
Yeah, same here. I think a lot of people before the season really put their eggs in one basket, kind of looking at this men's team. And I mean, I know I've said this several times, but no matter what, it was going to take some time for these guys to gel. But and I think what's so tough too is that Jamie Dixon, ever since he's come to TCU and been at TCU, he's never strayed away from his style of play. He will, you know, Jamie Dixon will go down playing his way. And I think sometimes at a certain point you have players that really fit that system, and at other times you don't, right? And I think this season it's a little bit of a mix of both. You've got some players that can have really great success in that fast-paced offense in a team where it requires you to be on the top of your game transition wise, but at the same time all these players are playing with each other for the first time, right? So and the lack of veteranship, at least within the program, is there to see, right? I mean, so it's basically everybody's first legitimate year outside of Ernest Uday, and this is only his second year at TCU, right? I mean, Isaiah Manning, Jace Posey, those guys have been here, but they didn't play much, or if at all, right? Those guys were redshirted, and so it was always going to take time, but I don't know. I'm kind of in the same boat as Seth in the fact that my expectations for this team were fairly low. With that said, I didn't think it was going to be this. I didn't think that they were going to struggle this much or this early on. I mean, the fact that TCU is 6-4 right now is very concerning, especially come conference play when the Big 12 is arguably the most the toughest, most physical conference in the nation when it comes to men's basketball, right? You are literally playing against several of the top 7, top 10 teams in the nation, right? And so there's a lot of work to be done with this team. Is it going to be done? Is the team going to be able to figure things out before conference play? I don't think so. And I don't think it's necessarily their fault, but at the same time, it's just, look, this is a bit of a transition year for TCU. You're going to have to feel things out. You're going to have to figure out who on this team can stay here for next year or the years after that to really continue pushing this style of play that Jamie Dixon wants, because he's not going to change that. It's clear that he sticks to this style, right? And again, though, with Frankie Collins being out, it sucks. It's huge, but just like Seth said, TCU still has the exact same problems with or without Frankie Collins. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they try to bounce back from this and, piece together some momentum and some wins here before conference play starts. But definitely not the season that TCU basketball wanted. But in all honesty, I think if you were really thinking about this team and focused on what this team had going into the season, this isn't necessarily a huge surprise by any means.
It is frustrating given how much TCU has been able to build some momentum in the program, and yeah, it's really difficult to be able to build an entire new roster. Essentially, it's like you don't really have anyone that has been around in this program, so it's going to be a challenge. The loss of Frankie Collins, it sucks in the fact that he is your best player, and he can contribute in a lot of different ways. Kind of was the leader on offense and being able to score and distribute, and it's just going to make the problems even worse. Now they shot 19% from 3 yesterday, 5 of 26, and they shot 65% from the free throw line, which is actually probably better than what they've been doing recently, which is really, really bad. I think there's a couple guys that I'm excited to watch now as they will probably get more elevated roles, and that's Vashon Alette and Micah Robinson. Those two guys have shown a lot early on in this season, and they definitely have scoring capabilities, and very excited to see how they perform. But other than that, yeah, it's kind of it's almost a lost cause at this point, and it's a bit frustrating. And it's not like TCU has played particularly tough teams. They did lose. They lost to Michigan, who's now in the top 25, but then they got destroyed by Santa Clara. They didn't execute well in overtime against Colorado State, and then they lost to Vanderbilt. So I'm not even sure what to expect coming up here in 13 days when they start Big 12 play against Arizona, who they've been disappointing in their own right, but this conference is going to be a gauntlet, and I'm not really sure where TCU fits. And I can't imagine that it's in that top half of the conference. It's probably close to the bottom, unfortunately.
If there's any bright spot, which there isn't really a lot of them, but it's that
If there is one, but there
if there are, yeah.
if there was a bright spot,
well,
there isn't. But
and you alluded to it a little bit, Zion. But the beginning of the conference schedule, which at the beginning of the season, whenever the schedule was released, we were like, "Oh my gosh, the Big 12 schedule makers have done us dirty." Maybe they didn't. It's gotten a little bit easier. Arizona is not playing well right now.
they have more losses than us.
Yes,
4-5.
they do. And Kansas State, it's kind of looking like the Jerome Tang magic maybe was not always, maybe is not there anymore. And then you get Houston, who's still good, but is not as good as we thought they might have been, or at least they have not played as well as we thought they might have at the beginning of the year. It's still tough, though. I mean, you look at it, you still got Kansas and you still got Baylor, and you got a trip to Iowa State later on in the season and a trip to Cincinnati, who's playing really good basketball right now. So it's not like I look at any of the games on the Big 12 schedule and I say those are gimmies at all, especially with how TCU is playing. I mean, if you lose to Colorado State, Santa Clara, then I can't tell you that you're going to win any of your Big 12 games.
Yeah.
Because I'd say that, I'd say that the worst Big 12 team is probably comparable to about Santa Clara or Colorado State.
Yeah, and it's that's the thing is I don't have yes, some of those teams haven't been playing well, but they're still probably way better than us. So we kind of it's a really doesn't help a ton, but I guess it's a little easier. But yeah, it's just frustrating. I mean, I get it's a tough spot with where you're at in this program and losing so many guys over the last few years that have really helped build this program back up again. But I expected a little bit more, but when you look at this roster, it's tough.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
Seth. Just quickly, I think looking ahead to conference play, right? When you go up against these really strong teams and these teams that do the fundamentals right? I think that's the biggest frustration with TCU is that sometimes the fundamentals are lacking. And I think the most obvious one is free throws. All 4 years I've been here, TCU has absolutely sucked at free throw shooting. I don't get it. There is a fix for it. You practice your free throws. I'm not saying that they're not practicing their free throws, but it's pretty tremendous to have a 4-year run as bad as they've had with free throws. But to that point, what I'm trying to get at is when you play these teams, you've got to execute on your fundamentals. If you lose the game in fundamentals, you have no chance. You need to make your open shots when you have them. Going 5 for 25, 5 for 26 from 3-point range is not going to be anywhere good enough to get you to compete with half of these teams, right? Turnovers are going to be very crucial for TCU, right? It's a fast-paced offense. You're going to have turnovers, right? There's so many moving parts when you transition back and forth down the court, but you really need to make every possession count, because if you're going to struggle in certain facets, which TCU will, it's like, where do you make that up, right? Where do you try to make up for certain lost points or lost opportunities if you don't make your free throws, if you don't hit your open shots, things like that. And it really puts so much more emphasis on making sure that you go into Big 12 conference play firing on all cylinders, at least in regard to the fundamentals, because if you can't do that, then good luck. I mean, I know Zion and I were talking yesterday, not yesterday, but a few days ago, and we were saying, look, TCU might have, about the same amount of wins as TCU women's has losses in non-conference play. At like, or not non-conference play, but Big 12 play.
Big 12.
Sorry, right? And I mean, it got a couple laughs. We got a couple chuckles out of it. But when you look at this team, you're kind of just like, yeah, right. I mean,
might be
TCU,
right.
yeah, you might be right. Right. I mean, TCU only had a 2-point lead over South Alabama in the first half, and then they, not squeaked out with the 9-point win, but they won by 9, right? And again, you look at some of these losses: Santa Clara, Colorado State, Vanderbilt. If you even want to think about March, which is way, way too far, I think for men's basketball, you got to think about game to game at this point. But if you want to even look at March and see if that's remotely a possibility, you're going to have to get some big, big wins and win the games you're supposed to win to try to offset some of these horrid losses.
I was just going to say, this kind of goes into the bigger picture, but now that like we're here, I feel like I'm going to change my mindset a little bit on this men's basketball team. Not that I had like a great expectations, and I've already mentioned that, but like change in the sense that like we're going to look for the little wins with this group and make those bigger wins, if that makes any sense. Like at the individual level, maybe not as a team level, but say Michael Robinson goes out and has a really good season for the rest of the way, and the team doesn't play well. Well, at least we have that to bank on for next year. Should he not transfer or anything like that, which I guess is not something that we cannot overly, put past anyone at this point. But yeah, it's like one of those things where you look at this and you mentioned it, Zion, you're like, Vashawn Ouellette, Michael Robinson, right? Looking for those guys to get elevated roles and see what they can do. That's kind of what this season is now. It's like just looking at the individual level of the team and rooting for those guys. And maybe the team doesn't perform well, but at least there's some players here that you want to perform well, and that if they do, that would benefit TCU in the program going forward. Because we always knew this was a bit of a bridge year. There was so much lost from a core that was built over the last like 4 years of guys that came in here and really, they were Jamie Dixon's guys, and they bought into his style of play and how he likes to coach a basketball team. And those guys left either by the transfer portal or, got drafted or just went to the NBA or went pro. And now you have this group of guys, and it's just a bit of a bridge year. And if they played well, great. But if they didn't, then this is kind of another year where Jamie Dixon can try and get these guys to buy in and get more people to buy in so that we can have the success that we had the last six-ish years and get that to carry over for the next 5 or so years. Because this is not a basketball program that can have sustained success, in my opinion. It's very much like TCU football in many ways. It's very much a developmental program where you're gonna kind of develop, and you're gonna hit a bang, right? Everyone hits their peak, and then that's a good season. That's the 2022 TCU football season, right? Develop, bang, everyone's there. And that's how that works. And so that's kind of what TCU basketball is to a lesser extent. I think TCU football is a better program than TCU basketball. I'm not trying to compare the two, but in the sense that TCU basketball is not a Kansas or anything like that. So I think I just want to set that clear for everyone. That is not our expectation. Our expectation is just to go 10-8 in the Big 12 and make the tournament.
Well, no, I think there's 20 games now in the Big 12, which is crazy.
Sorry. The expectation then is 20-0. I take everything back that I said.
Well, no, Seth, if your crystal ball is right this time around, that'd be pretty crazy.
I know. I was kind of close. Let's not put it past me that I was not kind of close.
You were close. You were close.
No, like the expectation is just to go have a good Big 12 record. If that's 500, that's 500. It's a good league. And if you go 10-10 in Big 12 play and your non-con is like pretty decent, that should get you a tournament bid.
Yeah.
It's definitely the expectations are a little bit different and with that. And yeah, I think that's kind of a successful year for men's basketball. Not sure if that's going to happen this year, but they would need one tremendous turnaround for that to happen. Yeah, like you mentioned, excited to see the development of Micah Robinson and David Punch throughout the season. I think those are some building blocks that you could start to build this program with. Both of those guys have gotten better, I feel like, each and every game. They've got a lot of impressive traits that stand out. But that'll finish things up here for this episode, talking TCU men's and women's basketball. You can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube page, or listen wherever you get your podcasts, all at Believe in TCU. So for Seth Dowdle and Ian Nepetian, I'm Zion Trammell. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, go Frogs.